The entrepreneurship program at Miami University has been around since 1992. The first class was taught by the namesake of our institute, John Altman. It evolved, and in the late 90s we added a minor, and then in the early 2000s added a major. And then in 2015, we took a step back and looked at where we were, and we examined a lot of different options and opportunities, and we decided at that point to do away with our major and replace the major with a co-major. And I'll come back and talk a little bit about that in a moment. So at the time that the article was written in 2018, we were actually 2 years in to our new co-major degree program, co-major and minor. We've since added 3 certificates in entrepreneurship, a certificate in startup, social, and creativity. So we were very early, and we were still exploring whether or not we made the right decision. I'm really pleased to say since then we validated, quite honestly validated, we made the right choice. When we redesigned our program, we did so with 3 fundamental principles in mind. One, while we're housed in the Farmer School of Business, we're one of 7 departments in the Farmer School. We're actually, as I mentioned before, we're now a co-major. So our first design principle that we put into effect that led us to the co-major was to create and build an interdisciplinary program. I say this all the time, that I don't believe one division or one college owns the franchise on entrepreneurship. And in fact, if you look at Miami graduates who've gone on to launch high-growth startups, a large majority of those are not business school graduates. And that's not to say necessarily anything disparaging. The Farmer School of Business is a top 10 business school and one of the top 10 public schools in the nation. But we decided to build this interdisciplinary program. Today, we have at least one student in our program from 117 of Miami's 126 undergraduate majors. Roughly 93% of the degree programs at Miami are represented in our program. The second fundamental design principle, and one that we really weren't sure whether or not it would work, and quite frankly, it has exceeded all our expectations, and that is that we created all of our curricular and co-curricular programs, designed them around a practice-based and immersive model. And you hear a lot of conversation in in higher ed about experiential learning. Well, we took that one step further. I know the Provost Osborne, Jason Osborne, who's the provost at Miami University, probably gets nervous every time I say this, but we have 18 courses in our curriculum, none of which have a textbook. Wow. We do all of our theory and methodology and process and tool-based education that you would normally get at any other program, but we spend a lot of time, as we refer to it, teaching the do. And it's through the teaching the do that we've learned that there's power in the learning by doing. And then the third fundamental design principle, and one that's been really, really critical for us, is our intentional integration with ecosystem partners. We've worked diligently over the 3 years or 2-3 years since the article was written to create meaningful partnerships with key players in the startup and social and corporate innovation ecosystem. And I'm really, really pleased to say that it's worked really well. Last year we had 705 professionals, startup and business professionals, engage with our program in one of 3 ways. In the classroom, either guest presentations or teaching specific courses or course content, as mentors and coaches to student-led startups and social ventures, and also as those that open their doors to internships. This year we placed 50 co-majors and minors at 41 companies across the U.S. For internships this summer. And so over the last 3 years, we've seen validation, both market level validation as well as educational or curricular validation through the work that's been done. And so we're really, really excited about that.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. I have been, following your work online, but I only had, a vision of a little bit of everything that you were talking, and 18 experiential courses is amazing. I want to have the opportunity to hear more on that, just because, of course, as you were saying, teaching the action part is what is more important. Super excited on hearing on that. So, Tim, as we look back, and I think you talked a little bit about that already, but comparing with 2018, can you give me like a little bit of an update, right? What has been changing in your program since then? So if you compare the picture from 2018 and now, what happened, right? How did you expand? How could you build such an amazing thing? What about your team and all the others?
Well, let me kind of boil it down to 3 or 4 things. First of all, I should have prefaced all of this by saying I am unabashedly proud of our faculty. We have an amazing group. We have 14 faculty and 3 assistant directors that carry the flag to our students. Our faculty have a diverse background. We have partners from Accenture and Deloitte. We have a former senior vice president, head of strategy and innovation for a top 10 bank, Fifth Third Bank. We have a gentleman that runs our creativity practice, or creativity vertical, Dr. Jim Friedman, that has 65 regional Emmys and is in 3 halls of fame for his work in media and entertainment. And so I'm really, I should preface everything by saying we couldn't do what we do without an outstanding faculty. But over the last 3 years, we've seen kind of 3 or 4 major things happen. One, we've seen explosive demand for entrepreneurship program. Over the 2-year period from 2018 to 2020, we're still calculating 2021 numbers, but student enrollment has increased 42%. Last year we had 3,219 students, roughly 20% of Miami's undergraduate population take at least one entrepreneurship course. Student credit hours are up more than 55% to almost 16,000 hours. Since 2016, over the last 5 years, total student enrollment in our courses is up almost 325%. So the one big element that we've seen is just an increased interest and demand for entrepreneurship education at Miami University. I mentioned as well that we have seen the interdisciplinary focus take off. I think at the time that the article was written in 2018, we had students from roughly 70 of Miami's majors represented, and I think I mentioned last year we had 117. Obviously, the goal is to have all 126, or whatever the number ends up being for the 21 fiscal year represented in the program. Interestingly, we have almost 500 co-majors and minors. Over 60% of the co-majors and minors in our program are have primary majors outside the business school. In addition to our work, instructional work inside the classroom, we have a developing reputation in academic research as well. Over the past 3 years, we have a small cohort of tenure track faculty, 4 tenure track faculty, have published over 20 refereed journal publications, including 8 articles in the Financial Times, 50 top academic journals. One of the interesting things that happened about 2 years ago, Susana, is we established our first research lab, Leading the Integration of Faith and Entrepreneurship Research Lab. Dr. Brett Smith is the founding director of that lab, and earlier this year we hosted our first ever research conference. Wow. We had 32 entrepreneurship scholars who made keynote research presentations and participated in panel discussions. What we were really floored with is the amount of registered participants. We had over 200 scholars from 20 countries around the world that actually participated in the day-long conference. And then the third thing that we've seen a tremendous change in the last 3 years is our emphasis on co-curricular programs. I think I mentioned that we had 18 courses in our core curriculum. We have 19 co-curricular programs, and that's double the number that we had in 2018. This is in keeping with our belief that we want to get students outside the classroom practicing entrepreneurship in real-world situations. In the spring of 2018, I'll give you 3 examples. In the spring of 2018, right about the time the article was being published, we launched a Social Innovation Weekend. It's the sister event to our Startup Weekend we run in the fall with Techstars. It's a 3-day immersive event that pairs student teams with faculty from across campus, and interestingly enough, combines faculty and students with professionals from public and private stakeholder organizations across the nation. They solve, unlike Startup Weekend, where teams get together to solve a problem with a startup as a vehicle for that solution. Social Innovation Weekend collectively focuses the energy of students and faculty and professionals on a societal problem. Over the last 4 years, students have addressed high rates of infant mortality among underserved populations. That was our first year. Second year that dealt with opioid addiction and addiction recovery. The third year, actually last year, we focused on food insecurity, partnered with Kroger and Kroger's Zero Waste, Zero Hunger program, and several other food organizations. And then earlier this year, we had 150 students work with 78 mentors from 52 companies across the U.S. to address homelessness and affordable housing.
Wow. In
2019, we became home to World Creativity and Innovation Week. It's an international program that is today the largest university-led celebration of creativity and innovation in the world. Earlier this year, we literally, Susana, had thousands of entrepreneurs in 92 countries around the world participate in events that celebrated innovation and entrepreneurship, all led by entrepreneurship faculty. Dr. Jim Friedman is the self-proclaimed Chief Steward Officer of World Creativity and Innovation Week, and he had over 60 entrepreneurship co-majors and minors that facilitated the week-long celebration. It culminated in the final day, April 21st, which is World Creativity and Innovation Day, which is also an international day of observance celebrated by the United Nations. And then in 2020, last year, we saw our Red Hawk Venture Pitch Competition become one of the top 20 university-sponsored collegiate entrepreneurship competitions in the nation. And so all of these efforts outside the classroom are just examples of ways that we try to expose students to entrepreneurship, whether it comes in the form of a startup, comes in the form of a social venture. We have 2 student-led investment funds, the Red Hawk Ventures, which is our $500,000 seed stage investment fund. And we have our social impact fund, a $250,000 student-led impact fund, both of whom provide students the opportunity to make real investments in real companies with real consequences. All again, designed around the hope to provide that practice-based immersive learning opportunity to students.
Oh, wow. Man, Tim, I'm just so amazed with everything you have been doing. And let me just, thank you for sharing that with us, and thank also Julie and everyone at USASBE, because this idea of building this channel, right, where we can learn from each other and share our ideas and what we have been doing is amazing.